What's up, guys? Lightwater here, and after many hours, I finally have another video for you. And boy, what a doozy this is going to be. I'm going to attempt to do this off the cuff, God help me. But this is going to be the complete Resto Shaman theory crafting, I don't know what we'd call this, thing for raiding for Shadowlands. It's going to be me rambling on about what I've discovered in the 20 hours of theory crafting I've done for this stupid spec. I don't even know why I went above and beyond and did like twice as much math as normal, but I knew it was going to take longer than normal, but I kind of just wanted to try some new things out, and I don't know why I did, because there's only 8 days left, and I have 5 other specs to do, and they're all more complicated than this class. This is the most simple class in the game. Theory craft, in my opinion. But randomly, I've theory crafted almost every single tiny little thing that has to do with this class. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm going to have to skip Disc Priest, guys. I'm gonna be completely honest. I'm never going to play it. Therefore, it has no intrinsic value for me to theory craft what is definitely going to be the hardest healer in the game. But anyways, this isn't about Disc Priest. This is about Resto Shaman. It is 8:20 in the morning. I just spent all night doing my 3rd theory crafting session for this thing. I don't even know where to begin. Let me get this off the screen. Let me get me off the screen. Okay. Make me a little bit smaller just in case. Where to begin? I suppose we could begin at the beginning. Solid. Good job, bro. Alright, anyways. So, of course, the first thing I did was I looked at the base values of all of the spells, just the most basic spells. Kind of included High Tide in there because it's kind of a combo. You know, so this took a while. I fact-checked 3 websites plus the beta constantly because I really wanted to make sure that this is truly the base values of the spell. So no gimmicks, no secondary stats added, not even passives, just the pure spells, just bookkeeping purposes. Okay, so that's like 3 hours. Just because I want to make sure, like, I was kind of distracted and it took me a while to kind of get back into things. This isn't really anything fancy. This is where it starts to get fun. So I took the base values, I added conduits, talents, secondary stats. I chose 20% crit, 15% haste, 10% verse, and 500 mastery, which comes out to like 42.8%. And I deem mastery, shaman's mastery at least, I take it as if you're always healing somebody at 50%. Maybe a little bit high, maybe a little bit low, your choice. It's most likely high. I think the average person you're going to heal in raid is like 60%, but whatever. I like the ability to do bigger heals on lower health people. I think that's when it matters the most. So I skew mastery a little bit. And I guess by a little bit, I guess 20%, but I digress. So anyways, man, maybe I should have just waited till after I slept. Whatever, it's fresh. Okay. So, given that, these are the update numbers. By the way, I'm going to put a link in the description because I am not going to talk about each one of these, and you will have to look at it for yourselves. I proceeded to do all of the spells plus combos I could think of. So this is something like 20 interactions. This right here is probably 8 hours of work, even though it doesn't look like much. Yeah, because everything interacts with the conduits, the talents, the secondary stats, the haste, verse, mastery, all of that differently, right? So I have, of course, factored in everything. Resurgence, changing the values of heals, you know, conduits that modify these abilities. And then I tried to include the versions of them without the conduits. Yeah. And I did all the talents too. So your Surge of Life, your Earthen Wall. I guess this is a good time to talk about maybe a little bit about each one of these. So Earth Shield has that conduit that increases the percent healing. So of course I factored that in, and I also kind of gave it a boost based off accidental healing that I deemed would happen to your Earth Shield target. I think I consider Earth Shield every 30 seconds. That's why I put a cooldown here for 30. I think an Earth Shield will be used up every 30 seconds. So that's what I based my math on. And then I included some chance for accidental healing, a healing wave here, a Riptide there. Like I get like 1/6 of a healing rain, just a bunch of like generic like little baby heals from all over the place, like what you might accidentally get if you're, you know, representing 5% of a raid group, which is 1 of 20 people. So yeah. And it made for some juicy numbers. You know, when you factor in the natural healing of Earthshield plus the bonus plus the conduit, it starts to get very efficient, very fast. It's very worth casting. Healing Rain, of course, all the math with Healing Rain is done assuming the maximum number of targets are hit. So you feel free to adjust that at your own will. If you feel like the average number of people is only 3, then divide these numbers by half. Healing Tide, same thing. Right. Everything's going to assume the best case scenario. So Healing Tide is 20 people, obviously all needing healing. Healing Surge. There was no point in doing regular Healing Surge because regular Healing Surge is so garbage that I automatically included Tidal Waves. So this is a Healing Surge with Tidal Waves. And as you can see, it's still the worst spell in your arsenal when you include Tidal Waves. It's so inefficient. It's just garbage. Here's a chain heal, regular chain heal, not a high tide. This is a regular chain heal with Unleash Life. And so there's regular chain heal information up here. This is with Unleash Life down here. And then I guess I should talk about a little bit. Spell names, cooldowns, cast time, you know, or the GCD. This is how much the heal actually is. This is heal per cast second. So this is purely like an HPS kind of stat, but it's a little bit different. It's how much healing you can expect from how much time you spend doing the action, right, per 1 second. This is a mana cost, like of this just a spell, right, after all the modifiers, including like Resurgence. And this is the healing per 1% mana efficiency. So the number on the right, in my opinion, is the most important number. If you're only going to look at one number, you should look at this number right here, guys. Moving on. Surge of Earth, of course, I factored in the -3 stacks from Earthshield. Earth and Wall, I was able to kind of make a spell power coefficient for it, even though it's based off stamina, because I looked at the relationship between stamina and intellect, and they seem fairly stable. So I just took it like a base character, and this is kind of what I deemed its spell power coefficient at. Of course, this isn't really like the most this is not the most solid math, but it works for now. I know Earth and Wall is just going to be an HPS increase because it's in a row with no other HPS increases, right? So it's like it's going to be worth using. The question is just like how worth it, and it's not really that important information. Downpour, this is of course assumed with full targets. It was like kind of surprisingly efficient, but you know, it's in a pretty high priority row, so meh. Wellspring, for those of you guys that don't know, and trust me, I didn't like 4 years ago, somehow this spell is still in the game and somehow it is still bugged. I tested it again on the beta. Wellspring does considerably less healing if you accidentally heal over 7 targets. I don't know why. It's like 1/3 of the healing per person. There's some kind of thing that kicks in and was like, whoa, hey, you can't cleave more than 7 targets at a time. What are you trying to do? Some healing? What are you trying to raid heal? You fucking retard. No, we don't like that here. 7 targets are busts. So the calculations are done at exactly 7 targets because that's the money number. 7 and down, you get the full spell power coefficient. 8 and above, you get 1/3 of the spell power coefficient. So you'd have to hit like 22 targets or 21 targets just to break even when you versus the 7 targets. It is a fucked spell, let me tell you. Okay, moving on. This is a high tide, and then the information below is a high tide with Unleash Life. Yeah, I was curious to see what kind of like efficiency the legendary Jornats would be with a high tide plus Unleash Life. So of course the numbers get kind of ridiculous, but I later on did a lot of math, and I don't think this is going to be the legendary. But yeah, I just kept doing math randomly. Vesper Totem. So here, these 4 right here are the are going to be the covenants. Plus they're conduits if you spec into the throughput conduit increases. So the number above is the information of the covenant abilities. Number below is with the conduits. Yeah. There's just only so much time in this video, already at 10 minutes. Here is the 7 spell combo I like to called the Jonas combo. It's the legendary with 5 stacks into a high tide chain heal with that's been Unleash Life. So Unleash Life, you'd essentially cast 5 healing waves, Unleash Life, and then I seem making sense. I think I'm just like brain lagging out. Anyways, it's all those spells combined plus a high tide into an Omega chain heal that I theory crafted the combo, so all spells put together, all 7 of them, and the combo didn't really impress me too much, so I kind of started moving away from the idea. But this was my original idea. So if you saw me theory crafting on stream, this was my first idea, and people called me retarded. I don't think I was that retarded, but it isn't the winner, I don't think. So moving on. Here's a complete list from in order of all of the best combos / spells by efficiency. So, yeah, I mean, this just kind of includes a little bit of everything. All the stuff listed above, plus some other things I came up with. Yeah. Here was I was like, I figured some people would be sort of interested in how I like did all the math for the things. So I tried to create like a little table with like a key to show you how I came up with the math for each thing. But it ended up taking forever, and I just ended up making like abbreviations. But it's still better than nothing. So if you're kind of curious like what all went into the theory crafting, you know, you can kind of like see it's like T1, tier 1 talent. I didn't even list it because, you know, I would assume that if we're talking about Riptide, you would figure out that it's Torrent. That might be too big of an assumption, but T1 is a tier 1, you know, row 1 talent. Yeah, so like H, that's the haste. V would be the versatility. C is the crit. M is the mastery, so on and so forth. And then C, or Con, would be the conduit that applies to Riptide. So, sorry, I'm so tired, guys. Okay. So yeah, here's a breakdown of all of that, and I tried to list a little bit of everything that I did. I know this doesn't look like the prettiest, guys, so I'll maybe work on it. Maybe not. I have 5 other specs to do. So here's the theory crafting of each covenant ability, and so here's something I did, guys, that I've never done before. I did a 6-minute simulation through like, I don't know, like 2 hours of math to figure out what a pretend fight would look like for like 6 minutes, right, for Resto Shaman. And I added up all of the after like all of my data, and I used it, and I figured out like how much you could expect to heal in a 6-minute fight. And so that made theory crafting the covenant abilities like possible, because then I could compare them. And so I was able to take how much they would heal, the mana they would take away. I found out what that mana would turn into, which all excess mana, luckily it's very simple for Resto Shaman. Excess mana always turns into healing waves, because you use everything else on its cooldown, or as much as possible. The only spammable thing you can really do is healing waves, because spamming chain heal is garbage. Just regular chain heal is a lot worse than healing wave. Efficiency wise, I should state. So that meant that I had a base. So I knew that for every 1% mana, it turns into 233% spell power coefficient. Okay, simple enough. So I went through and found out the mana cost of all the abilities, found out how many times you'd cast them in a 6-minute fight, found out what that translated to as healing lost. Then I looked at how much the healing they would do in a 6-minute fight, subtracted from the healing lost, got a total number, divided that by the total healing that you do in a fight to find out the percentage that it would represent as an increase. That was a lot of words, but essentially I was able to theory craft HPS increase on these covenant abilities, which I feel like is mandatory. I feel like I had to go to these links, which I'm not sure if that means that the other healers are going to take like 25 hours. And I'm not really looking forward to that. There's just only so much time before Shadowlands, and I still want to make videos because this is the whole purpose of this. But yeah, maybe the process will be sped up now that I've done it once. I can only hope. We definitely did a lot of the groundwork, so maybe like 5. Maybe I'll be able to save some time. I don't know. Anyways, so what I found out was Vesper Totem was about 4% HPS increase. Its conduit that's relevant is about 0.5%. Primordial Wave is almost 7%, and then with Deluge, because Deluge naturally synergizes very well with Primordial Wave, it's about an 8% HPS increase. So I was very surprised. The Primordial Wave probably represented like an hour of math alone. It was a very fun challenge. I knew it was going to be where all of my a lot of my brain power went, because it's the only covenant ability that interacts with your spells. Everything else is just you get a new spell and then the equation's fairly simple, right? This one has a very interesting interaction, and it gets even more interesting when you get its conduit, which adds a chance for a reset. And so after some testing, I found, well, guess what? The resets can reset. So that's a fun math equation, right? Because if you have a 30% chance for a reset, then a 30% of the 30% of the 30% of the 30%. You get where I'm going. And it's only going to become more disgusting later on when you can get past rank 7 conduits. I did all my theory crafting at rank 7 conduits, by the way, guys. And that's what I was told we're going to be able to get around mythic rating. So take that for what you will. I mean, I feel like I'm going to be saying that a lot, but I feel like at some point, you just sort of have to take a stance somewhere. Like you have to hold on to some math, right? I mean, everything I'm saying is going to be slightly off. I'm not claiming to be like perfect, right? And Blizzard keeps making changes every day, guys. So take that with a grain of salt and just enjoy the ride. Assuming you appreciate this kind of stuff. Anyways, so yeah, the Tumbling Waves conduit was the most impressive of all of the Covenant conduits. It was a 3.39% HPS increase to like your whole character. So when you combine the 8% with that, it's like this combo was like the most insane, and pretty much is the whole reason why I think you probably go Necrolord. But I'm jumping the gun. Spoilers. Fade Transfusion, the ability is garbage. Was only 1.33%, and the conduit doesn't really do much. Just reduces the cooldown. Just a small little baby percentage increase. Chain Harvest was okay, 3.67%. The conduit was okay, 0.77, but together not really too much to write home about. Okay, now as far as the other conduits, I was surprised that Embrace Earth showed up so well, and it gets even better if you have the Earth and Harmony Lego legendary. But yeah, a lot of it is just the fact that the target's going to receive a bunch of accidental heals, and just receiving another 8% on top of your Earth Shield was just really good synergy. But at the end of the day, it's still not your best one. Technically, your best one is Heavy Rainfall, I think, right? Because Primordial... Oh, yeah, right. Tumbling Waves is 3.39. So definitely Tumbling Waves is the best. Heavy Rainfall comes in a close second. But the problem with Heavy Rainfall is it assumes the best, right? It assumes that after you use your, I think it's Mana Tide or Healing Tide, that there's going to be healing that needs to be done, which is strange. Is it Healing Tide? Pretty sure it is. My brain is just blasted. Let me just check. Of course. This is a base shaman. Using Healing Tide Totem. Okay, so here's the problem. Using Healing Tide Totem, you just used Healing Tide Totem, so you just did a bunch of AoE healing. The chance that everyone stacked A and needs lots of AoE healing still for another 20 seconds is like 2 conditional modifiers that are going to make Heavy Rainfall very bad. And because you can't really change these too much a week, maybe maybe this is situational. You know, if you're progging on a boss and it's just all stack healing, then heavy rainfall is obviously good, right? If there's lots of AoE healing, you can always guarantee people are staying in the healing rain. Perfect. But some of these fights, I'll be honest, you can't stack. So yeah, heavy rainfall is obviously going to take some negatives. Nature's Focus. This is the increased initial heal on chain heal. Even with like, you know, potentially going like the legendary stuff, this didn't really do much to the healing. I was surprised. The problem is it's just the initial chain heal. And I checked, guys, because of course I tested everything, and it doesn't ripple to the other heals, even if you have the Jonats legendary. So I was really disappointed on that, honestly. I thought at least, you know, like, or sorry, even if you had High Tide, because I thought, oh, well, maybe they can't diminishing return, because that's High Tide's thing, is that they don't lose value. And so I was like, I've outsmarted you, Blizzard. But nope. However it's coded, doesn't work. So that's why it's little baby 1% HPS increase. Swirling Currents, I think, is your most optimal, like, second choice, in my opinion. It's like reliable. It just gives you 3 empowered spells essentially after casting your Healing Stream Totem. It's by 29%. So it's a pretty beefy thing. Now here's what you can do, right? So there's a sick combo where you can combine Unleash Life with Swirling Currents onto a Primordial Wave that hits a healing wave like 4 people for a lot. Like a lot. Oh yeah, I should tell you, I spent a lot of time theory crafting Primordial Wave. I found out what it works with and what it doesn't work with. It doesn't work with Earth Shield. So if you click the person as Earth Shield, the other heals don't get it. But it does work with Deluge and Unleash Life. Strangely enough. So obviously the Deluge one makes sense, right? They all have Riptides. That's a no-brainer. But I think the Unleash Life one was the interesting one, because I thought, well, why would that work if healing or if Earth Shield didn't? But I tested them all in various ways multiple times, and unless, you know, the 4 a.m., 3 a.m. Jitters were getting me, that is how I remember it. So you can test in your own, but that's sort of interesting, right? So that means, assuming Unleash Life still will work by the time the game comes out, that every third Unleash Life you would actually want to use on Primordial Wave's healing wave, right? So for a lot of good synergy, right? A lot of percent increases. So moving on to the Legendaries, of course, I theory crafted them a little bit to the best of my ability. So yeah, Jonats came in around like 4.5. Spirit Walker's Title Totem, I'm not a fan of it, so maybe I was a little bit biased, but it's only like 0.4%. Primal Title Core, that one did okay. This is the one where every 4 Riptides you get like 1 more. Obviously this has very good synergy with the Necrolord Conduit, so it gets a lot more value. Comes at 6%. But there were some real surprising winners here. I bet you guys are probably like, what the fuck? Yeah, Earth and Harmony. I did the math for this a billion times. I just thought, there's just no way. Turns out that when you increase a heal that has 9 charges by 150%, even though it's like Earth Shield heals, lol, assuming you go through an Earth Shield every 30 seconds, this is the kind of HPS increase you can expect. It's kind of insane. It does get a little buff with Embrace the Earth Conduit, but not enough for you to take the Conduit. So you still wouldn't run the Conduit, in my opinion, but that might change as the Conduit becomes more powerful. The main thing is just that Earthshield does okay healing, and by increasing its healing by 150%, it's just like really good, efficient healing to be done. Like it just churns out a lot of numbers, and the ability to constantly add charges, like potentially. I mean, I only allowed like, I think I said like in maybe a 6-minute fight you might earn back 9 charges, essentially 1 Earthshield for free. Is I think the math I did. I feel like that was pretty generous. Like that wasn't like too many charges back I was giving it. So this is the math included with your ability to get back essentially 9 charges worth in a fight, plus the 150% healing on the charges. So, and of course, the 150% healing is going to synergize with the 20% increased healing from Earth Shield already. So the stuff just starts like adding up, right? And then you factor in like Deluge basically going to always be on the target, because if you got Earth Shield, you might as well always have Riptide on them for the 20% increased healing, or they're going to be standing in your healing rain, right? It's just the math adds up. I mean, those things start ticking for just like so much. Yeah. So Ancestral Reminder, it's like, I don't know, it's like whatever. Who cares about this? Deeply Rooted Elements is definitely the second place, or perhaps tying for first. Definitely a little bit more of a raid healing, or just all around legendary. The problem is, this is the one where you have a 7% chance to get a sentence every time you cast a Riptide. This has innately good synergy with Primordial Wave, because that counts as a Riptide. And each time Primordial Wave resets, that's another chance for this, right? There's one interesting interaction with this one. The Ascendance does proc the Ascendance heal, which is really cool. And somehow, because it's how it's coded, it also then attempts to Ascendance the Ascendance heal. But it does it at like a reduced value of like 1/4. So it's like you randomly receive an Ascendance heal of plus 25%. And then it attempts to do 25% of that 25%. So it's kind of like an Ascendance plus 30% heal. So, you know, that got factored in. So a lot of the healing from this comes from the initial burst, the explosion of healing that just happens randomly. Yeah, obviously healers don't like randomness. I'm okay with randomness. But yeah, this is definitely the raid healing legendary, and I think the Earth and Harmony is the tank healing one. I hate to boil things down to that. And I know you're probably thinking tank healing. You realize you're theorycrafting a Resto Shaman here. I think Resto Shamans are actually not that bad of tank healers now, given how many OP options they have, and their Earth Shield thing, and their Mastery, and Deluge just being a free 20% always, and then you've got like Unleash Life. You've got a great target for your chain heal. Yeah, I don't know. You do plenty of cleave healing. You'll be like a melee plus like tank healer, because all your your healing ray and your chain heal. So that's just how I see it. I don't actually see them being that great at like healing the raid too much compared to other healers, believe it or not. Which I know is kind of a bit of a meme, because you think Resto Shaman, you think raid healer, but unless everyone's stacked, I don't really think you're going to be able to heal everybody too well. You're only going to be doing a chain heal about every 15 seconds with this build. So anyways, rest of the legendaries, Echo of Enar, only like 1.6. So the Sephu's Proclamation, I did the math. It averages out to like these secondary stats, these percentages. It's like a 5% HPS increase. I mean, it's like weird, random. It's assuming obviously perfect uptime. So with anything less than perfect uptime, it's going to go down. Hardly worth talking about, honestly. Vitality Sacrifice. Yeah, I don't know. This is like another weird one. It's like 4% maybe. So basically the things to take away from this are the only good legendaries we're talking about, in my opinion, are Primal Tide Core, Earth and Harmony, and Deeply Rooted Elements. So pick your poison. You've got reliability. You've got reliability in like raid healing. You have reliability in tank healing, and then you have RNG, all around healing. So, in my opinion, you pick your poison. I think you take a little bit of a hit if you go Primal Tide Core, but that's your option. Right? That's your choice. It's not too different, right? Assuming this is at 9.9%. But yeah, Earth and Harmony is theoretically pound for pound the HBS legendary somehow. All right, onwards to Soulbinds. Okay. So I did this including, now that we had a basis for, or now that I have a basis for like theoretical healing done in a 6-minute fight, I could then theorycraft like how the covenants and all the stuff stacked up against that, right? So I was finally able to fix the puzzle that is Soulbinds. things in covenants. Like, how do you choose, like, what soulbind, what conduit, what covenant, like everything. And so I put it all into one package because that's how you're going to have to make the decision, right? Because they're not independent. So I organized them by soulbinds, and then gave them their initial percent increase healing from the conduits that you would pick and from the covenant ability. And there's some interesting results. I think the thing that's the most interesting to me is that in the hands of someone who actually knows what they're doing, the percents between the choices weren't as drastic as I thought they were going to be. I think the worst one is like 9%, and the best one is 18%. So that's kind of crazy. Like, you could mess up, pick the wrong covenant, pick the wrong soulbind, but as long as you pick the right things in the soulbind, you're only down like 9%. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Like, dare I say, Blizzard might have actually been right about like their system being so complicated that it'll just sort of all mesh together okay. You know, I realize that this is maybe a Resto Shaman, just like lucky thing that sort of happened, but I don't know. The more I look at it, I think that the conduits sort of balance everything out. Now that they've ensured you can always get 2 potency conduits, that's like half the power from the choice right there. So yeah, so there's sort of like this base level of power you can sort of expect regardless of like what combination you went with. But that being said, the ones that really stick out are Pelagos at like 17% basically. Marleth, Emni, I don't even know these names, but essentially you have 2 options in my opinion. You can go Emni in the Necrolords, or you can go Kyrian with Pelagos. These were the clear winners in my opinion. And Emni kind of wins out because Primordial Wave is just insane. Now, that being said, the Kyrian Covenant ability isn't that bad. Like, Vesper Totem did okay. There's a lot of like free percents that Pelagos gives that made him really good. Just like really good like mastery gain, and he gets that versatility bonus. If you don't get like the perfect bonus from both of these, then Pelagos loses a lot of value, right? So like the 4% versatility is like based off you alternating spellcast, which will happen on Resto Shaman fairly easily. I don't know if you lose the stacks upon fucking it up, so that's something that would definitely make him lose. I think the safe play is just go Necrolord, because all the power is in the conduit and the covenant abilities, right? Not like these random proc secondary stat bullshits from the soulbind abilities. So like, yeah, and this one's like super passive, or also a passive that's like guaranteed, right? Lead by example, just a primary stat increase that happens like all the time. So yeah, I have all these listed here. You can kind of look at them a little bit. I tried to do all the best combinations. The math's not like insanely solid, but by this point I was already at 17 hours in, so I really didn't care too much. Like, I tried to do my best, but like, how do you value a movement speed increase? So I tried to assign a value. I was like, okay, well, every 5%, on average, I think is worth 1% healing increase. You can disagree with that, probably. You probably will, but yeah. Okay. Final thoughts. I feel like this is 7th grade slideshow. This is how I would go with Resto Shaman personally. I would go Necrolord. I'd go Emni from the Soulbind. I would go Tumbling Waves and Swirling Currents for my conduits, and my legendary, depending on what my raid needed. If they want a raid healer, then I'll go deeply rooted and just hope for good RNG. If they want a tank healer, I go Earth and Harmony. And that you would just need to look at your comp to find out. It's pretty obvious what the good tank healers are, but who knows? Once I start doing more theory crafting, maybe the numbers will shift out way differently. Right now, I think Resto Shaman is a perfectly viable tank healer, assuming that tank heals will be required. That's another thing. I've mentioned tank healers several times, but tanks might not need that much healing. especially like on farm, you know. And there's going to be a lot of accidental healing in the melee that tanks are going to soak up, and tanks do so much healing themselves now, so it's like whatever. But tank healing is kind of another word for like single target healing. So in theory, you could always just like heal people that are taking like bleeds or something, or dot mechanics that are super like intensive. So tank healing isn't completely useless outside of tank healing. Okay, I digress. Talents. Let's see. I think, yeah, this is the setup I think is best. Unleashed Life, you'll use 2/3 of the Unleashed Lives on high tides. Here's the rule of thumb, in my opinion. You want to try to never cast a non-high tided chain heal. Casting a regular chain heal is very bad. Do not do it. You can help it. You have plenty of AoE healing that comes from other sources, and there's way better AoE healers than you. I think the Resto Shaman's role is going to be more of like a spot healer / tank healer, believe it or not. Chain heal just isn't that efficient unless it's boosted up by a lot of things like Unleashed Life, Deluge, High Tide, yada yada. And then the 1/3 of the Unleashed Lives you want to use with Primordial Wave, assuming you're Necrolord. The combination of Unleashed Life into the Primordial Wave and stacking on top of Deluge is insane healing. Like, actually just nuts. It's very efficient. And on the off chance that you get a reset, it's like even better, right? So like imagine a world where you have 3 Riptides up, you cast Primordial Wave, then you Unleash Life, okay? So that the next heal you're going to do is going to do plus 35%, plus 20%, plus your mastery, plus all your other bullshit. And then there's going to be a ripple effect where every single person that has a Riptide is going to immediately get healed for 60% of the healing wave that you do. So, yeah. It's just a lot. And then imagine it resets, and you get to do it again. Right? If Primordial Wave resets, you can immediately cast another healing wave. And this healing wave will be even stronger at 5 targets. And if it resets again, it'll be even stronger at 6. You get the point. There was some interesting interactions that I thought about. Undulation gets stacked up like infinitely fast if you have Primordial Wave, so obviously that's super good. And obviously you could 50% increase the Primordial Wave if you play the game just perfectly. But I feel like this is something that would be super hard to pull off. Maybe not that hard, but I feel like here's just a guaranteed 35% every 15 seconds that you could just do. And then you can use this on the chain heals and stuff outside of it. So, and even with Annihilation factored in, it just didn't beat Unleashed Life. Like Unleashed Life actually does an okay heal. It's super cheap, super efficient, gets Resurgence, only 15-second cooldown. It's another button to press, but I think it's worth it. I think the nerf that they gave Healing Wave and just like all heals across the board kind of changed the way the game's supposed to be played. So yeah. These options, so Deluge is a no-brainer. I don't know why so many Resto Shamans like Echo of Elements. I think they have brain cancer or something. I don't know. Maybe they're just not good at hitting Riptide when it pops up. You just slam it, make a weak core. It's only 6-second cooldown. Like Riptide is going to represent like 25% of what you cast as a Resto Shaman, basically. I mean, you have like 0 haste. So I realize that you don't always want to cast it, and maybe that's why people like having the charges. Maybe they like want to be able to pull off like a double Cloudburst combo or like double Healing Stream Totem. A lot of Resto Shamans tell me that they need something to cast while moving. In my opinion, there's a lot of healers that have skills and things that help them to cast while moving, and you have Graceful Spirit if you need it. I might be inclined to believe that Echo of Elements is better if you're forced to like Windrush Totem, and so you're having a really hard time moving and healing. But I mean, like, what do you really buy? This doesn't reduce the cooldown of Riptide at all. Like, it doesn't at all. It doesn't reduce the cooldown of Healing Stream Totem. All it does is, in my opinion, it allows you to bank things, or it's like retard protection. So, I don't know. Like, imagine not clicking the button that says plus 20% healing. That's all I'm saying. Like, I can't believe that this is even like an argument, and I'm actually the minority in believing that Deluge is better. That's fucking delusional in my opinion. All right. 30. I'm always going to go Spirit Wolf form if I can. Obviously, there might be a fight where you might need to take one of these, but Spirit Wolf is just free movement speed and DR. So 35. So Ancestral Vigor is actually kind of good, but unfortunately it only works on Healing Wave, Healing Surge, and Chain Heal. And Riptide. But it only lasts for 10 seconds. It does technically move the current HP and the maximum up at the same time, so it's kind of like 10% increased healing on the target. So it's good for saving lives. But if we're going for HBS, like the parse, Earthenwall Totem is the winner. Now, if you're going for prog, then in my opinion, Ancestral Protection Totem is the winner. So I would always try to get away with going Earthenwall Totem and then just go with the strategy of don't die forehead. But, you know, technically, I think everybody knows deep down in their heart this is what kills bosses. So yeah. But yeah, this is the meter padding one. Okay. So row 40. Technically, Nature's Guardian is an HPS increase. Very, very minor. So if there's absolutely no movement, like 0 movement in the fight, you go this. If there's like some movement and you want to be selfish, there's this button. If there's a lot of movement and you're required to bring the raid cooldown, then you have to take Wind Rush. But obviously, you always want to default to Graceful Spirit, in my opinion. Row 45. Cloudburst is like definitely the winner from an HPS standpoint and like control standpoint. I feel like the Shaman lacks control, which is, I feel like you're going to probably laugh because you're thinking like, what? Spirit Link Totem, Healing Tide. Like, now they have lots of buttons, but sometimes you have like little control, like not that much control when your cooldowns are down. And Cloudburst just being able to like choose when you want it to go off. Obviously, you want it to sit and cook for the full duration. And then boom, just do 30% of all the healing you just did. But yeah, assuming like a perfect world and it's always down for its max duration, it's because it collects 30% of all your healing and it has a 50% uptime. Half of 30% is 15%. So in a world where you're always healing, there's no overhealing, this is like a 15% HPS increase, which is pretty gnarly. Definitely more than a regular old healing stream. But yeah, so Downpour is a bit of a meme. Flash Flood would help you out a little bit. It wouldn't be like bad. And it might be required if it's a very heavy movement fight. Just so you can get those cast in and not have to actually build haste. Because you don't want to build haste on your gear as a Resto Shaman. It literally does almost nothing for you. Haste, the only thing haste increases is Riptide's hot healing, Healing Rain, the speed at which Healing Stream Totem ticks, and unless I'm having an aneurysm, I think that's it. I think it scales with Healing Tide Totem as well. Yeah, I could be wrong though. All right, moving on to the last row. I really wanted to pick Ascendance, but even with only casting 1 chain heal every 15 seconds, if you do like the math, basically it'll always be a high tide chain heal. So I did the math, figured out like, you know, what the high tides would have changed into, what that mana would be used for if you weren't casting chain heal ever. And it just every time high tide won in all the situations I like tested it in. And like math wise. So even though it's nerfed, this is technically the passive HPS increase. But there's not too much of a difference between high tide and Ascendance if you want to go Ascendance, by the way. Also, there's the Ascendance like instant heal. And I think there's an interaction between Ascendance and the random proc Ascendance where the Ascendance ascendances the Ascendance and just continues like a diminishing return. Like the Ascendance heal will get multiplied by your current Ascendance and then also like increase the duration that your Ascendance is going if you get a random proc in the 15 seconds. There's only like how many Riptides can you, with 6-second cooldown, you get like 2.5 Riptides, maybe Primordial Wave. So like at most you could have a 21% chance or 37% chances to Ascendance the Ascendance, but I guess it's worth mentioning. Now we're getting really RNG. So yeah, but I think like high tide came out to something like 13% HPS increase, and Ascendance was like 10. So if you're a fan of active buttons and having more control over your gameplay, then Ascendance. If you're just looking for like raw throughput, me ook, no think, high tide, right? And that's the kind of player I am. I don't want to have to think. I just want to win on. I want to do all my thinking outside the game so then I can get into the game, just hit the pretty button on the screen. Okay, I think that's kind of the rundown. Final thoughts. I'm surprised that I liked theory crafting Resto Shaman this much. At first, it really sucked, but then I saw some light at the end of the tunnel with some different builds. You know, the potential. I mean, I guess it still exists, right? The potential 5-stack Jonats, you know, Unleash Life, Deluge, sort of High Tide playstyle. I like the Earth Shield with maybe the Earth Shield Legendary kind of tank healing thing that sort of developed. For the most part, though, here's the issue I have with Resto Shaman. I wasn't going to be complaining, but here is the rundown of your theoretical cast in a 6-minute fight. 2 High Tide Totems, 24 Unleashed Lives, 3 Earth and Wall Totems, 22 High Tide Chain Heals, 27 Healing Rains, 49 Riptides, 12 Healing Streams, 12 Earth Shields, and 34 Healing Waves. A Parchment and a Pear Tree. Okay. The problem with that is there is only one thing listed in all of those heals that I just said that doesn't have a cooldown. So if you really think about it, in a theoretical world where there's always something to heal, you actually don't have a single choice as a Resto Shaman as to what to do, because mathematically, the answer is before you. It's Healing Tide is greater than Unleashed Life is greater than Earth and Wall Totem is greater than, you know, like so on and so forth, right? And so you just go down the list of efficiencies until you reach the bottom and it's Healing Wave. So you don't even have 2 spells that have like alternate interesting uses for different situations where like your playstyles really change. I mean, what does your playstyle really even, like what's the difference between a good Resto Shaman and a bad one? Like assuming that you can nail all your cooldowns every time. And it's like, I don't know whether or not you use like Healing Rain. Like, I don't know, like I guess when you decide to like burn mana inefficiently, like a good Resto Shaman's going to try to like not do that at all costs, right? To stick to the rotation, in my opinion. It's the first healer that I've seen that is actually like honestly just a rotation. Like I could just put a greater sign in front of all of these heals and the rest of the class sort of plays out on its own, right? Don't cast Chain Heal unless you have High Tide. Try to only cast one every 15 seconds with Unleashed Life. The natural mana usage will ensure that basically every 15-20 seconds you'll get you know, enough charges for High Tide. Like every 30 seconds you should get 2 charges for High Tide. You use 1 charge every 15. Right? Keep up Earth Shield. You know, cast all your spells on cooldown. Like you just make a weak aura for all of these. I don't know. Which is, I guess, kind of the thing a lot of people like. Or well, no, I stand corrected. Sorry, it's something a lot of people don't like. It's something I'm okay with. But yeah, I just don't think you'll be thinking about your tidal waves that much, or I don't know. The class just seems very uninspired, you know. And what's like the coolest legendary? Oh, your Riptide has a chance to proc Ascendance. That's cool, I guess, right? Or oh, your Earth Shield's like super Earth Shield. Okay, but it's all it's like passive, right? It's not like your decisions have been altered. Realize I'm rambling now. Any final thoughts? Okay, I think Resto Shaman is going to be a good spot healer, a decent tank healer, okay raid healer. So all in all, if I had to guess, I think their throughput is fairly decent. Oh, I should give them a power rating. This is going to be something I'm going to try to do to all the healers, because if I'm going to do like a 6-minute simulation, then I might as well give the data on it. So here is the data I used. Assuming you can spin 4.5 mana pools, which you can with like full consumes potions, resurgence, mana back, plus like a mana tide, maybe like one other person's mana tide, or like symbol of hope, or like one innervate, just like one other thing. In a 6-minute fight, you can use basically 4.5 of your mana pools. Assuming that, then you can do 242,000 spell power coefficient and 101. What does that actually mean? it means you could do essentially, if you had 1,000 intellect, it equals about 6,386 HPS. You know, average across your whole character. So we'll see how these numbers actually hold up to the truth. It'll be interesting if I nailed it correctly. But according to my theory crafting, the Resto Shaman should do, for a 1,000 intellect, they should do 6,386 HPS. So this is something new I'm trying. We'll see if I'm correct. It would be pretty insane if I'm just like right on the money. Also, it'd be kind of really depressing if I'm completely not. But I'm going to try to do this for every class. So then I can finally, if someone asks me like how they stack up like raw HPS, it's not just like, well, I did the math and I think this. And I can be like, I did the math and I know this, which is going to be something different. And all it took was 10 extra hours of math. Oh, I am so done already. And it's the first class I've theory crafted and it's the easiest one. I don't even know why I'm here anymore. Just to suffer. Yeah, I have all of these papers now covered in math. Oh, I'm going to put a link in the description. Basically, that the Google Doc that I was talking about, and maybe I'll do some more stuff and try to update it a little bit. But for the most part, I think my time with Resto Shaman is done. And I'm going to abandon it probably, because I'm assuming I'm not going to be playing it. But if I decide to play it, then obviously the theory crafting will continue and I'll further update everything. But this information should be viable, in my opinion, for quite a while. And it should be valuable for the rest of the expansion. So if there's changes, if you have this information, and basically you'll be able to figure it out, like what actually changes and how it changes. And I think we'll have a pretty good idea of where Resto Shaman sits compared to the rest of the healers when I do the rest of the healers. So I'm hoping I didn't miss anything, guys. Feel free to just ask me questions, provide feedback. Really anything you can think of. Probably something like don't do this video when you've been up for so long. Anyways, this is 52 minutes already. Good God. I'm gonna let you guys go. Thanks for watching. This has been Resto Shaman for Shadowlands raid healing. Yep.